I often wonder how many knitters out there hate pulling just like me. Over the last year, I've always wanted to knit a baby blue cardigan, but I kept putting down so many beautiful patterns just because I was scared of all the pulling. But when I saw the white cardigan, I immediately knew this was the one I had to start. I knew it wouldn't be an easy knit, but honestly, over 3 weeks of knitting this, I ran into way more problems than I expected. Well, still, finishing it felt incredibly satisfying, and in the end, it was totally worth it. Before starting the project, let's do a little unboxing. So I had been using a really cheap yarn winder for a long time, and honestly, I didn't have many complaints about it, except that my fingers always hurt from holding the tension while winding. And right before my trip to Japan, my brother accidentally broke it, so I had to buy a new one. I decided to upgrade to an electric yarn winder, hoping it would save my fingers and require less effort. Out of all the yarn winders I looked at, I chose this one because I really love the vintage look. I can also adjust the windy pattern and the speed. It works quite well with thicker yarn, but to be honest, with the thin factory yarn that I often use, it can be a bit risky. Sometimes it runs just too fast and doesn't stop when the yarn gets stuck, so the strand just snaps and causes a disaster. While I was at the shop, I also saw this yarn spinner. It's a 3-in-1 spinner, and again, I completely fell for the vintage design, so I decided to bring it home as well. It spins really smoothly and feels very convenient to use. And honestly, this was more of a birthday treat for myself, because otherwise I probably wouldn't have bought it, especially since I don't really use all 3 functions. I received the test knit pattern at the end of October, but I didn't actually start until mid-December. The reason being, the yarn I ordered at first looked completely different from the photos, so I had to return it and then order a different color from another seller. For this project, I use factory yarns by holding 5 strands of yarn. I hold together 2 strands of 95% lamb's wool and 5% of cashmere, along with 3 strands of 100% wool. The colors of the cones were slightly different. As you can see, the lamb's wool leaned a little minty blue, while the wool was more of a true baby blue. Holding them together created this soft melange effect that I ended up really loving. So I started swatching on 4.5mm needles, and luckily I hit gauge on the first try. At that point, I felt pretty confident reading charts, but the reality was totally different. I didn't even know what I was looking at because my swatch looked honestly quite ugly, and I couldn't even see the cable motif clearly. At the time of speaking, I'm sure I didn't really know how to read charts yet, and I also confused so many things between right and wrong side.
This is a cardigan
Now, I'm going to show you one of the struggles of knitting with yarn cones that I rarely see people talk about. You have to hold multiple strands together and wind them at the same time. If the strands are thick, everything usually runs really smoothly, but with thin strands like these, the chance of tangling are much higher. Because my electric yarn winder runs faster than a manual one, I first wind the yarn into balls by hand and only later use the electric winder to avoid tangling. It does feel a bit annoying because there are so many extra steps, but I still prefer doing this to avoid a huge mess. And honestly, pre-wound balls are much easier to carry around than bringing 5 separate cones, which together weigh about 500 grams. When I first cast on, I quickly realized why reading the charts felt so difficult to me. Part of it was obviously my lack of experience, because I wasn't fully comfortable reading charts yet, so every symbol felt a bit overwhelming. But another thing that made it harder was how the pattern was structured. The chart, the symbol explanation, and the abbreviation were all on the different pages, so I constantly had to flip back and forth just to understand one row. Because I was still new to charts, I also didn't really understand the logic behind stitches, which made everything much harder to remember. So eventually, I decided to write my own simplified notes with color coding and short explanation. That way, I didn't have to keep checking different pages all the time. Honestly, this helped me a lot, especially before I fully understood what all the symbols meant. If you are new to chart reading, I really recommend trying this. City, so I brought the project with me. Things are not getting easier, but my comprehension improves a bit. I still need to refer back and forth between the charts and the abbreviations, but luckily, I didn't make any mistakes. However, I don't really recommend reading charts from a tiny phone like this because it's really a torture. When you look at a long row through a tiny screen, all you see is just tiny little dots, and of course, you'll feel dizzy after a while. After being done with all the paperwork, we came back to our previous neighborhood to visit the stray cats that we often fed before. We made many cat friends there and we even named them. Of course, well, I don't really recommend that because we were so sad to leave this place missing them so much. So, yeah. We are just afraid that one day we come back to find them and we cannot see them anymore. Got caught up with work, so I didn't make much progress for a few days. But we are going to spend the weekend in Vũng Tàu, and I thought I finally have more time to knit. But once again, I overestimated myself. I only went out and knitted twice, so I finished just a few more rows before the weekend ended. The rest of the time, I was basically eating, sleeping, strolling around, and eating again. And here's my father-in-law teaching me how to cook lamb steak. Yeah! Up to this point, I had finished quite a big portion of the yoke and completed another cable repeat.
But this one, it is a more fitted garment, and it's.
I was still deciding between size 2 and size 3, but one thing I really like about this pattern is that all sizes share the same starting point, so you can just keep knitting and decide later, right at the end of the yoke. So I encountered some issues. Actually, only one issue is that I miscrossed this part. This one should be the front. Actually, I realized it maybe like 2 rows after this. But then at the time, I was thinking that, oh, maybe just leave it like that. I don't really have to care about it. Maybe it is not that clear. Mind you, if we have that kind of thoughts, then maybe, just maybe, we should redo it immediately. But then now I'm kind of intimidated by it, and then maybe I would just try to unravel everything. So my first attempt, after 15 minutes or something, I just realized that I got it wrong. So I did moth stitch, but actually I have to alternate between knit and purl. So you see everything just doesn't line up. Now I will have to go back and rip everything and then do it again. Okay, see you in a few minutes. So I succeeded. As you can see, the mistake was around here, and now it disappeared. So for example, this one's supposed to be under, and then this one is supposed to be above, and then I just have to ladder down and then pull this under this cable, and then everything is nice. So that is very lucky. That is very lucky. Otherwise I will have really big problem. Okay, bye. It was the moment I needed to make the sizing decision, but I still wasn't completely sure, so I decided to block it midway just to check. If it didn't have the positive ease I wanted, I would increase to size 3 instead. Let's hope for the best. And here we are. Sometimes I really forget that I'm actually a grown adult with house responsibilities. So now I need to bake eggs and eggshells to make supplements for my cats so they don't get sick. Hello, it's me again a few days later. This yarn actually arrived a few days ago and I love it so much. I already know what I want to make with it, but I can't cast on yet because, jokes aside, I'm trying to be a monogamous knitter. Please just don't judge me. So because I really want to cast it on, but I cannot. So instead, I just wound it into smaller balls, just so it feels like I could start anytime I want. The yoke of my Wilde Cardigan dries surprisingly quickly. After blocking, I checked the gauge again and everything was right on point. I honestly couldn't stop admiring it because the fabric looked completely different after blocking. During this project, I also had to use a lot of hand cream because, well, the lamb's wool absolutely destroyed my index finger. You can really see the difference here. Before blocking, the stitches look thin and flat, and after blocking, they become much sharper and fluffier. So beautiful.
Remakes, so they look really nice, kind of earthy colours, but they're quite vibrant. I did have an issue with the colours running because this jumper.
So I transferred everything onto stitch holders one more last time to check the yoke depth, and I already measured it and I think it's good now. Well, I mean, at least I don't have to worry about the underarm cutting into my armpits. Yay. Being the indecisive person that I am, I still left myself a way out by adding a lifeline at the last row of the yoke, as you can see here. So my plan was to knit part of the body and try it on, and then if it didn't fit well, I could read back and continue the yoke in size 3. So plan B it is. After my trip to Japan, I also started a new hobby, which is puzzles. But as you can see here, I made absolutely no progress. My main hobby is still knitting, so bye. If there is one good thing I've learned from knitting, it is that I should never jinx anything. I should never say things like, oh, I'm almost done, or I'm so glad I didn't make any mistakes at all. Because, well, mind you, right after that, I discovered not 1, not 2, but 3 mistakes, and I didn't even notice them for several days. That is totally unbelievable. So now, I had to fix everything before continuing the body. Luckily, cable mistakes are totally fixable. The bad news is just that they take hella time. So please applause me, give me an applause because I fixed everything. It looks nice again and I can continue knitting the body. Another funny thing is that no matter how many sweaters I knit, I always forget how long the yoke takes and how fast the body goes once you split the sleeves. This time, despite all the cables, the body moved really quickly for me and I almost finished 2 more repeats as you can see here. So I tried on and I finally felt confident that size 2 worked for me. So I decided to remove the lifeline. Welcome to another episode of Another Day, Another Disaster. So I originally planned to finish the body first, but while winding more yarn, I noticed part of my cone had been snipped. Yes, like snipped. So I switched to knitting the sleeve first, just in case I didn't have enough yarn. I'd much rather have a slightly shorter body than short sleeves, because short sleeves just look not appealing to me. Back to the moth story. At first, I thought I had accidentally cut it while opening the package a few weeks ago. I even complained about it on Instagram, and someone suggested, well, it might actually be moth damage, not anything snipped into it. So I immediately rejected that idea and kept blaming myself because I was sure I had snipped the cone. But then you know what? I went back to check my footage with all my strength because luckily I had filmed it. And of course, I saw it with my own eyes. My knife did not even go near the cone. I was honestly shocked and a little terrified because I've heard so many horror stories about moth infestation. I was so scared they might have already spread into my yarn stash at home. So I contacted the seller and she confirmed it was likely moth damage. But she also reassured me that they probably ate the yarn and were already gone long before the cone was shipped to me. Luckily, she still had a small amount of the same yarn left, I think around 100 grams or something, and she sent it to me for free. She also told me I didn't need to worry about an infestation, but honestly, my bigger concern at that point was whether or not the replacement yarn would arrive because I only had 7 days left to knit this cardigan. Well, technically 12 since the test knit deadline was January 14th, but I was traveling to Dalat on January 11th for a close friend's wedding, and I really wanted to wear this cardigan there. So my personal deadline became January the 10th, and all I could do was keep knitting with the yarn I had and hope that the new yarn would arrive in time. So almost a week passed. I was so worried that I barely filmed anything and I just kept knitting non-stop. I only turned the camera back on once the new yarn finally arrived. To catch you up, in 6 days I finished left sleeves, both button bands, and today I'm wrapping up the collar. So the button bands were also double knit, and I love how neat and sturdy they look. The buttonholes are clean with no loose strands. They are much nicer than what I used to get with knitting machine. So this was my first time knitting a collar constructed like this as well. So you double knit while picking up stitches, working 2 layers separately on 2 needles, then joining them together while shaping the collar with increases. Another thing I really enjoy is the Italian bind off, because when I first learned it, I think it felt impossible to remember and always looked so messy. But once the muscle memory kicked in, well, to be honest, it almost felt like entering, I think, a flow state or something, because everything just moved automatically. Until now, I honestly don't think any other bind off gives the same finish as this. So the deadline is getting really close now because my flight is in 3 days, which means I need to finish the right sleeve by tomorrow so the cardigan can be blocked and have enough time to dry. I think it could dry within a day, but just to be safe, I'd rather give it a little more time. During this project, I've also been reflecting a lot on whether I actually enjoy knitting like this, and honestly, I really do. I really love this project and I've learned so much from the process as well, but what I don't really enjoy is pushing myself under such a tight deadline. If I could choose again, I definitely wouldn't try to finish this in 3 weeks. I probably give myself more time, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, because this time it felt really stressful, like I was constantly running on a wheel. So yesterday I've already finished 2 part and repeats, and this morning I think around 12 o'clock I've started working on the other repeat and this part, and until now it's 4 p.m. and I finished 1.5 part and repeats. Not a half. I think I still have 13 more rows to go.
Kìa, mất tiêu rồi. Thiệt tình. Thêm cái nữa kìa. Lại biến mất nữa rồi. Nobita hả? Cậu đang làm cái gì ở trên này vậy hả? Mình đang tìm sao băng. Chỉ cần nói ra ước nguyện với sao.
Hello. So I just finished everything, every single thing. Also, so I think I'm just gonna show you for the sleeve. I did the Italian bind off, so I did some double knitting before I bind off for the hem. I thought something on my belly button, but it's actually this one. I didn't want to do it this long, but because you have to finish the whole part and repeat before you do the ribbing. I finished it. It's just freshly blocked. It has the intended oversized feet. Look at the arms, it is kind of lengthened a bit, which I really like. The sleeves are also way roomier than before. I didn't want to pull the body too much because I don't really want it to lengthen any longer than that, so maybe 2 centimeters longer. And I'm really happy about the fit. As you see, all the stitches bloom and fills up the holes. I'm not really sure if you can see it, but it looks really beautiful. And I think we still can see the mistake that I made on these sleeves, but it is not too obvious like before. You see, it is right here. I also noticed that I made a mistake right here, but well, it's on the side seam, so it doesn't matter. And now it's finally time for the reveal. It doesn't have buttons yet because I'm still looking for the perfect ones, and at first I was a bit worried about the yarn and the color choice, but in the end I'm really happy with how it turned out, and it feels like my vision of a baby blue cardigan has finally come to life. Thank you for watching and see you in the next episode. Bye!